let's have a look now at the second principle of growth, which is probably the most fundamental principle of them all. If you've been in business for any length of time and you've tried to sell to a customer, then the reaction that you get from the customer is almost essentially determined by the concept of compelling need. Now, compelling need is, do they have to have it, or can they do without it? Can I defer it? Is there an acceptable substitute? What is the pressure on me as the buyer to actually do something about this element of need or wish? So, where are the high needs? The high needs are always around some very specific dimensions. Saving people's lives. If I have a product that saves people's lives, believe me, I'm tapping into a very high need. Taking away physical or psychological pain. People do not hesitate if they're in deep pain or have strong psychological needs to spend money to solve the problem. Now, psychological pain, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean a mental illness. It can be someone who likes shoes, who will remain nameless, or someone who likes jewellery, or someone who wants to look like a famous actress, or wants to perform like a famous athlete. Psychological need can be wanting to be better than the people down your street. It's the psychological pressure on you that's important to motivate you to go and do something about your need. A last area, which is probably the one that's probably the most important for most businesses who are not a sort of in the biotechnology space, is regulations. When you keep people out of jail, when you stop their business being closed down through a regulation compliance problem, when you stop them from being fined, particularly seriously, believe me, you motivate them to do something about a particular problem. So regulations in their own right drive compelling needs. Okay, so these are our dimensions. Now, let's go down to the other end. You're in a high street, lots of shops, you want an ice cream. You go out and you say, right, what level of compelling need am I meeting with my ice cream? Well, of course, the first thing I can do is I can just wait. You know, I'll put it off a little bit. I can defer it. I can not do it. I can decide to have a drink instead. I can have a cold water, okay? Or I can just say, it's all too hard and I'm going to go home, okay? So in a situation like that, you know, it's a very, very low need. Now, what we want to do as a business is we know what the bookends are. Low need down here, really hard, can't get anyone to buy it for love nor money. Up here, they're knocking down my door. How do we start to move our product or service up this dimension? Because what the compelling need does is compelling needs reduce sales cycles, they enhance prices, so they lift our profit margins, they tend to have very quick decisions by consumers. The evaluation is often very quick. They tend to have very high referral rates. Someone who's solved a compelling need will go and tell everyone else with the same need so that you don't have to do as much marketing in order to get people to the table. So these are really, really critical things to work on. The other thing I found, just as an aside talking to hundreds of entrepreneurs, was that I often ask the question, how easy is it to copy what you've done? What I find is that very complex solutions are very hard to copy and therefore tend to give us a competitive advantage. But it's interesting, it also has quite a good alignment with strong needs. So typically when a problem is very complex to solve, it often is, more often than not, it's associated with a high compelling need. So it's often a very good question to ask yourself, you know, what is the most complex problem I'm working on? And therefore let's reflect on how quickly we close deals in that area versus something else that's easier to do. So here's the questions that I often ask people in order to find out which of their many products or services or problems they're solving are the ones that they should focus on. Which ones are the easiest to sell? It's pretty fundamental, isn't it? If the customer wants it and wants to buy it right now, okay, that's a hell of a lot easier than you pushing to try to get them over the line. So it's an easy question to ask. Which product or service has the least price sensitivity? Because clearly the higher the need, the more I want it, and the more I want it right now, like let me have it right now, what do I need to pay to get it? Because I need it right now. So typically you'll find that some product or service you're doing has least price sensitivity. Where do you get the highest customer referrals? A product or service that has a very tight focus that solves a compelling need is often in a marketplace of like individuals. So people tend to have the same sorts of problems and they will talk about it. You know, I solve this need, you've got this need, I solve this need with this product, and therefore you tend to get relatively high referrals. Look at complex problems. I love complex problems. Not only are complex problems most often associated with high compelling needs, but they're fantastic for competitive advantage. It's partly the learning curve effect, that the more you know about a particular problem and the deeper you go, the better you are at it, the more productive you are at satisfying the solution, but you also become more of a specialist. You start to speak the customer's language better. You relate to them better. There's a higher level of empathy. And so, again, they're often desperate to find a problem. You become the expert. Price is not a problem, and you can fix it. When you're talking to customers, what makes the greatest difference to their lives, what makes the greatest difference to their business, you'll often find not only is that a complex problem they need to solve because they haven't been able to solve it, but you'll also find that they're willing to pay a premium to solve it. And then what are they telling you? So the question is always ask the customer. So what are the actions? And these are critical actions that you must apply always in your business over time. Ask your customers. We don't do enough of asking our customers what's important to them. What problem are they trying to solve? How can we help them solve the problem? Can we float in a customer forum an idea? What if we did A, B or C? Which would work for you? What would be important for you? If we changed the price, is it worth the additional price? If we added another dimension of functionality, is that going to add value to you or detract value to you? What are some things that we could go out and find for you? What are some products or services that we see overseas that might work for you and might add value? So customers are fantastic. We need to look at complaints as suggestions for where we can do a better job. Not just, these people are driving us mad, okay, let's get rid of them and file them at the bottom of the drawer, but they're actually telling us something about our product and service, and we can actually use that to improve what we're doing and therefore not only decrease complaints, but actually increase the value to customers. That one's quite important. Always look for compliance. Always look for regulations. Regulations are fantastic. You know, I'll take you back to the 80s. I was in application software in the 80s, in manufacturing software, warehouse management, inventory control, production scheduling, supply chain optimization, financial reporting. Of all the big companies that were out there doing application software in the 80s, let me tell you the product that drove the highest growth. Payroll. Payroll. As basic as payroll. Why? Because when you don't get the payrolls out, people go on strike. Factories close. Payroll on time is essential. Payroll is also a very complex problem. Lots of allowances and all this stuff that you've superannuation and deductions. So it's a very complex problem to solve. Let me tell you a second one that fundamentally changed small business software. VAT. And here, GST and BAS. So GST, VAT fundamentally changed the market for application software for small firms because it was a complex problem, but they had to do it. They didn't have a choice. Don't do it, we put you in jail. So all of a sudden, we have this just huge wave. It's catching the wave, remember? Huge wave of new software at the small business level. Remember? Change. What was the change? They introduced GST. What's the change in payroll? They change the damn thing all the time, don't they? And you can't wait to fix your software. So the market for external software just absolutely boomed because there was these big companies that just specialised in it and they got the stuff done on time. So, that's quite important. So look at collecting data on where you get business from, because then you can start to see where the referrals are coming from. And it's referral business that actually fundamentally changes companies' survivability. When you're developing products, look at developing deep products. Solve deep, complex problems, because actually what happens is you push away your competition. You develop these learning curve effects, you get better and better, the product gets better and better, the fit gets better and better, you can start charging a premium, your sales cycles reduce because you've got a much better fit. It pretty much always works.